If you are the kind of politician that genuinely wants to be president of the United States, a lot of those folks don't want that. They don't want to be shooed in 8 weeks before an election starts. Because let me tell you something. People think this election is in November. The convention is in 4 weeks, and early ballots go out. The first early ballots in this country go out 4 weeks after that. This election is not in November. It's in September. It's in the end of September. It's in early October.
Moments after the RNC concluded last night, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez hopped on Instagram Live to talk about the push for Joe Biden to step aside. During her nearly hour-long live stream, she detailed a few key points that she felt most media coverage has omitted in its reporting of the jockeying inside the Democratic Party regarding the ticket, and that people are framing it as a much easier and frictionless move than it actually would be. We've gathered a few of her key points. First, the legal challenges that will likely occur if the ticket is changed. Take a look.
That law that allowed that deadline to quote unquote change also gets enacted and enrolled something like 60 or 90 days after passage, which now puts us in a legal gray zone. So whether you think it's above board or whether you don't think it's above board, I can tell you that it is guaranteed, and it is virtually guaranteed, and it has been confirmed by the Republican Speaker of the House that Republicans are already preparing legal challenges to any name change on the ballot that may happen, occur, arise, or be possible.
Now, campaign finance rules only allow the transfer of Biden's war chest to Vice President Kamala Harris should she replace him on the ticket, which would result in another obstacle if the entire ticket was replaced, which she pointed out is what some of her colleagues actually want. Take a look.
These rooms, I see what they say in conversations. A lot of them are not just interested in removing the president. They are interested in removing the whole ticket.
Then later in the stream, she explained electability questions and argued that some people take for granted Biden's popularity among older voters. She said pundits and members of Congress calling for Biden to step aside take this for granted and wrongly assume that those voters would quickly get behind Harris or another candidate. Take a look.
Joe Biden kind of like stomps with older people, like electorally, which is one of the strongest and most consistent electorates. And it's actually a hard electorate for Democrats to win. You know, those are not people that are on Twitter, but they vote more consistently than almost any other bracket.
So, Cenk, I know you've got some thoughts with her laying out what this actually looks like if Biden were to be replaced. Does it give you any pause at all?
No, not 1%. I think she's totally wrong.
Thanks for watching. Our audience has helped build TYT into the media giant it is today. Together, we can accomplish anything. Support our work and join us at tyt.com/team.
First, let me give her credit on two things and then tell you all the things that I disagree on. First of all, she was very humble throughout. And I'm not.
Yeah.
So give her credit for that, take away credit for me, okay? So for what that's worth. Number two, she made one good point, which is the older voters one that I just showed you. We've told you that in the past too, but she's right to emphasize that Biden not only does well with older voters, but has done better and better recently. So if Biden has any percentage chance of winning, it's because he'll win those older voters and they do vote more consistently. But I don't want that to be false hope for you, because the number one thing that AOC is getting wrong there is she kept talking, and I watched the whole thing, she kept talking about risk. And she's like, well, if we change, there's gonna be risk. But there's also risk if you don't change.
Yeah.
And so that's what people, and it's a natural human thing that whenever there's change, people get scared and they think, oh, there's risk in change. But they never quite, like, it's normal and it's human. But there's also risk when you don't change, even though it doesn't feel as risky to stay on the same path. So the Ohio risk is minimal because they passed the law, there's no question about it. But let's say maybe they could change their mind and do some sort of shenanigans. And I'll go all the way up to 5%. The Supreme Court, it would be maniacal for them to say, oh, Trump goes on the ballot, but the Democratic candidate can't go on the ballot. I mean, it would cause this country to split in a way that no one's ever seen before. And Justice Roberts isn't gonna do that, but okay, fine, put another 2% risk there. A new candidate might not do as well. I mean, they can't do as well as a guy who can't talk, but I'll go crazy and give you 20% risk because you never know. You find a dead body for the new guy, 3 months in, I guess anything could happen. But you add all that up and we're still in the 20s and 30s on risk. Whereas Joe Biden's top advisors agree with me. He has a near 0% chance of winning. Okay, fine, let's not say it's 0, let's say it's 5%. So on the Biden staying in part, we have 95% chance of losing. That is 10,000 times more risky. So I just think her analysis is totally wrong. And then in terms of like what she brought to the table, like insider knowledge and stuff, and she said, oh, I've been in some rooms, and I was all ears. And that's why I listened to the whole thing. Maybe she knows something I don't know. And she just kept saying two things. One is, well, they don't have a full plan laid out, like a full legal plan. But we don't even know what absurd thing that the Republican lawyers are going to make up to do their nonsense challenges. There are no real challenges. All the ballots go after the Democratic convention. So you have to go to fantasy land to find some sort of objection where the Republicans could make something up even though there's no reality to it, right? So I didn't see any new information there at all. And then the second thing she said was the least persuasive to me. She's like, I don't know if you know this. And it seemed like that was the main reason she was doing this video. They might not pick Kamala Harris. Good. Why is that like, oh my God, they might not pick the second least popular Democratic candidate? Fantastic. Where's the bad news? And she made it seem like, did you know that? That they might not anoint the Democratic leader. I mean, my God, us progressives, we have to follow what the establishment says. Biden or Kamala Harris, I don't want anybody else. How is that the progressive position? It's not at all. So I think she's coming at it from good faith, but I think she's completely wrong.
Yeah, I guess I'll just push back on that, Cenk. I don't think we are even in a position to argue what the progressive position is. A progressive position is, I think, what you attempted to do, which was have a real primary. There's no real primary, and she opens that entire live saying there's not a lot of time left. And I think those of us who are progressive who actually want someone like Kamala Harris are not coming at this because we like Kamala Harris's politics. We're coming at this because it makes the most sense. She has the name recognition and she's literally on the ticket. So again, I think that the time for a progressive ideal, and I'm sorry to say this, has closed, but hey, maybe a brokered convention and we give Bernie Sanders the old third try, or who knows? Maybe there's someone I'm not thinking about, but I'm remembering and reminded of Nina Turner's op-ed recently where she said, look, this is a centrist fight. It's a centrist fight. The centrists shoved Joe Biden down our throats. It's a centrist fight. Now they're trying to pull him, let them fight. So that's where I'm at on this. But what I will say is that I do think Kamala Harris will bring two groups of people, and I don't mean to go super identity politics about it, but it will give the voting base a shot in the arm, which it needs, and that is young people and people of color. Yes, older voters are more reliable, sure, but aren't they more reliable to vote Democrat no matter who is actually the nominee? Whereas I know people who've told me, I will pick up the phone for Kamala Harris. I will actually do the work for Kamala Harris. You don't just go to individual voters, you need liaisons, you need organizers, you need volunteers. And those people showed up in 2020, they flipped Georgia. And if you actually wanna do that again, you're gonna need a different candidate. And I think Kamala Harris would be good for that. That being said, I like the tea that AOC spilled. I like the tea a lot. And I do think that it is interesting to hear some of I like the crap talking where she's like, these people are with anonymous, quotes and blah, blah, blah. I thought it was a good live and I agree she was humble.
Yeah, I don't think you characterized her arguments fairly, Cenk. I think when you're talking about the anointing Harris, I mean, she wasn't framing it that way. The obstacle that she laid out was that you can't just transfer the war chest that Biden has, which is estimated to be around $100 million, to anybody else. FEC rules govern here. It can only go to her because she is the presumptive nominee. So you're potentially freezing or throwing away $100 million. And we just talked the other day. What a bad decision. I think a lot of people had the same reaction after the failed assassination attempt. Whoa, you're going to stop campaigning during the RNC? Well, what do you think they're talking about? They're talking about spending money on ads. They're talking about all of these things that money would be used for later in the cycle. So I think that it wasn't necessarily fair that she's upset about a coronation. It's just that seems to be the most frictionless process. And then also within the context of that conversation in her live, she said the same people who are making these calls for Biden to step aside, not all of them, of course, but some of them don't want Harris. And she talked about the alignment that we find peculiar, but we've talked about before. How weird is it that we're on the same side as the elites and the donors who want Biden to step aside? We need to take a step back and think, okay, what do they want in this? Other than winning, other than defeating Trump, what do they want in this? And if these are the same people who are also saying they don't want Harris, it's only fair to acknowledge that and ask ourselves why.
Yeah, I know why, because they're worried she's gonna lose, as I'm worried that she's gonna lose. Like, is Kamala Harris some sort of secret progressive and that's why they're worried? No, Kamala Harris is not at all progressive. So I don't know what twilight zone we're living in. So look, there's a bunch of things that I need to clarify. So number one, it's true that Biden cannot transfer his $100 million to another candidate that isn't Kamala Harris. But that is very, very, very misleading, because he could transfer it to a super PAC who could then spend it on any candidate they like. I don't think that's a real issue at all. Besides which, do you have any idea how much money the new Democratic candidate is going to raise instantly? They're going to raise billions of dollars. That the donors are saying, we want to give this vat of money, but we don't want to give it to Joe Biden because he's definitely going to lose. So we're ready to give it to any Democratic candidate. You think that the donors are going to be like, don't worry about it. I don't need the new Democratic candidate. Of course they're going to give him billions of dollars. So, and they can transfer them on. Number two.
No, that's a different kind of spend though. That's a totally different kind of spend. You know that. Super PACs can't just pay to fund a campaign. They're talking about the money that would actually go to build out and stand up the campaign infrastructure.
No, but Jordan, the new candidate's gonna have billions of dollars for campaign infrastructure. That extra $100 million, the super PAC can just spend on anti-Trump ads. Easiest thing in the world. They're gonna have to spend $100 million on anti-Trump ads anyway.
You need the staff though to get out the vote.
Jordan,
to build
you're going to have the staff the minute Katzenberg and
the timeline is already,
and all those guys give you hundreds of millions of dollars in a minute.
The timeline is tight. The timeline is tight.
No, guys, it's going to happen instantly. They have all the money ready to go, and they won't release it because Biden's the candidate. And so
you're saying the money could go to the super PAC, but it's also going to the campaign. It can't go to both.
No. I'm saying the new donor money is going to will be billions of dollars that goes to the Democratic candidate. No one disputes that. The extra $100 million that Biden has, 100 to 200, goes to a super PAC and they run anti-Trump ads. Easy peasy. That is not at all a concern. So second thing that's a clarification. Look, there has not been great, Francesca's right that there has not been great polling on quote unquote what progressives think, but there is a giant poll on what Democrats think. 65% of Democrats think that Joe Biden should drop out. There's no lack of clarity. 2/3 of Democrats saying, for God's sake, move on. We'd like to win instead of just guarantee a victory for Donald Trump. Number three, Kamala Harris, there's no reason to believe that she brings young voters. I've never seen her bring young voters. Young voters didn't like her at all in the primaries. So that's not true. So the black voters, maybe, but I've gone on black radio. I've gone on more media than you could imagine, and establishment black radio. And they're split. There are some that say, oh no, ride or die Kamala Harris. And there are others who are like, on the other hand, we'd like to win. And by the way, the candidate we picked might be Wes Moore or Reverend Warnock, who are amazing speakers. So like
Reverend Warnock, first, that's just, I mean, I don't even know what your time. I don't even know if you're serious or not, Cenk. I mean, again, a first-term senator barely won. The name recognition just ain't
Senator
there.
Obama.
Yeah, but very different with the timeline that we're working with.
Kamala Harris was a first-term senator, and she's done nothing as vice president. So she's in the same situation as Warnock.
But
Warnock's mentioned in every top 10 of candidates. So my point is, look, why don't we pick the strongest one? Why would we want to anoint some rando? Why doesn't she go win it? She would be a huge
Being
favorite.
vice president
She
is
would be
very
a huge favorite.
Cenk.
No. But she would be, if she, as a gigantic favorite in the vice president, if she can't win enough delegates at an open convention, that means she's a loser and we shouldn't pick her. But she probably will win. And if she wins the convention, then she comes out 10 times stronger.
I think arguing for an open convention is a different argument than saying that she's not the strongest candidate. So I mean, I might agree with you on it.
Look, no, this is obvious and definite. None of us know she's the strongest candidate, but an open convention will tell you who's the strongest one. So if you say don't have an open convention, you're saying I don't want the strongest one. I just want Kamala. And that makes no sense.
But hear me out a little bit. Doesn't it feel slightly anti-democratic? I mean, we've had a lot of critiques of the DNC. No. I know, and I say this. I'm not saying I know. Again, coming at it with less hubris and more questions. I think we're all on the same page here of beating Trump. Okay, but it's like now we're saying, okay, well, the delegates can just decide for me. But it's like, I didn't go through a primary. And I understand the primary process in a lot of states was bunk and it was a shoo-in for Joe Biden. But if people already cast their ballot for Joe Biden, then and on the ticket is Harris, it does feel like, okay, are you gonna just like come out of left field and nominate like a Pritzker on me? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like that feels like it's purely in the hands of delegates.
No, okay, so let me explain my point of view. So I participated in that so-called primary. So do I believe that we should have done it through a real primary? Of course! They canceled several of those elections, as we've talked about a lot, and no one else has. So it wasn't a real primary, and not only that, they wouldn't allow a debate. Why wouldn't they allow a debate? Because they knew Joe Biden was an absolute disaster, and they were trying to hide him, right? If they had done a debate in the primaries, we would have had a real democratic process. He would have lost, and he wouldn't have lost to me. But if we had a debate, he would have been humiliated, and then all the governors would have rushed in. Kamala Harris would have rushed in. That was the right way to do it. But that ship sailed. It's gone. You can't undo it, right? So there's only two options left. One is Democratic leadership comes in and says, I anoint Kamala Harris. Least Democratic option, obvious, inarguable. Or we let the delegates decide. Those are Joe Biden delegates, the most conservative Democrats in the country, but at least it's some shred of democracy. It's not Nancy Pelosi and 10 donors in a room telling us who the candidates should be. It's all those delegates, 4,000 some odd delegates, actually having a debate, going, hey, and Pritzker wouldn't be a rando. If whoever wins the convention, and again, it's going to almost certainly be an establishment candidate. Don't get me wrong, I'm not like, I don't live in a fantasy world where somehow Bernie Sanders is gonna win this thing or any progressive is gonna win this thing. The best you could hope for is some sort of progressive adjacent person like Jamie Raskin as VP. So, and that would be amazing and wonderful, right? But again, if you anoint, then Kamala Harris anoints her VP and none of them are tested. If you test them at a convention and it turns out Pritzker does an amazing job of convincing the delegates, then he's your best candidate.
Do you think that endorsement is anointment?
No, because if Joe Biden says, hey, I think it should be Kamala Harris, but let's go to an open convention. Clyburn says I think it should be Kamala, but let's go to an open convention. No problem at all. Everybody can endorse whoever they like.
Got it.
There was one thing I did want to push back on also around her favorables with other demographics. You mentioned that you weren't seeing the younger voters. I don't think the primary is the best comparison because there were just so many options and everything broke out into weirdly different ways. The coalitions that were formed, how it shaped up. And also Bernie was just a uniquely popular figure. So when compared to Biden, for instance, a Times Siena poll found that her favorables among voters under 30 was plus 20. Hispanic voters was around plus 17. Obviously, black voters was higher than Biden. The only categories where Biden really outperformed Harris were older voters, like, of course, what Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez said, white people with a degree, and white men. So it definitely is there. She is polling, and she's much more liked among younger, diverse voters, and that is what led them to victory in 2020. They all pointed to a young, diverse coalition of voters giving them the victory over Trump. They don't have that right now, and she can bring that. And the other names that are being thrown out, a lot of white people, a lot of untested, a lot of unvetted people. Who cares? And while they might be good governors, they don't have the profile that she does. And again, time is of the essence because people are going to start voting in late September.
Yeah, look, here's what I don't like. Other guys are white. So what? So what does that mean? Are they going to win or are they not going to win? I don't care what color they are. I just care if they're going to win. So this is not like, hey, it's time to play identity politics patty cakes. Dude, we're up against Trump. And do we really mean it? Is democracy actually on the line? So by the way, Jordan, all those points that you made are perfectly good points. Now, important caveat, they're vis-a-vis Biden. They're not vis-a-vis any other candidate like Wes Moore, Andy Beshear, or Gretchen Whitmer, right? But even so, great, she can make those points at the convention and she can say, look at all this great polling that is on my side. Look at this energy that I'm gonna bring. And she's a huge favorite as the vice president. If she can't win at a convention, she can't win the general election.
I think I'm in agreement with that. I am in agreement with an endorsement from Biden, but also an open convention. I also just think, look, low information voter, you gotta go with name recognition. I think it's bonkers to think that someone would have a leg up on a vice president.
Okay, last couple of things here. First of all, tyt.com/open convention. Please, if you're on the side of open convention, please sign that. It's links in the description box always when either we're live or you see this video later. tyt.com/open convention if you want the strongest possible Democratic candidate. And by the way, again, I'm gonna say it for the second time because it's so important. Kamala Harris could easily win the convention and she could prove herself at the convention. And she's also been better lately. There was a lot of word salad for a long period of time and a lot of stagnation. She didn't do much as vice president, but lately she's been giving some good speeches and it got me excited. So if she wins at the open convention, terrific, then everyone is happy, right? So, and lastly, look, back to the racial politics. If something really bothered me in what AOC said. She said, my community is the most affected. And it seemed to imply, hence, we have to defer to them. But wait a minute, what does that mean? That's such an absurd point. What if your community is wrong about who's the most viable candidate and you don't speak for your community? And by the way, we're losing your community. Right now, Trump's leading with Latinos. That's who she was referring to. And okay, I could pull the same Trump card, all right? My community is even more affected, Muslim Americans. Donald Trump says he might kick us out of the country. So does my opinion now win? I win the identity politics lottery and Muslims are the most affected, that's it, you have to choose who I want. Absurd. Stop saying that crap. Now, if you want to say it in the context of, hey, I'm going to deliver a lot of, Kamala Harris can deliver a lot of Latino voters, black voters, etc., and here's the numbers behind it like Jordan did, okay, no problem. That's a good case to make at the convention. But don't tell me that any community gets to veto other communities. It doesn't work that way.
I disagree, but
okay. I mean, we can disagree all day long, but there's no way that I'm going to say, oh, you're Asian, then you win. Oh, you're Latino, you win.
It's about the most vulnerable, but I agree with you that ironically, the same people that she wants to protect are the people that Joe Biden has actually isolated through some of his terrible immigration policies and obviously this ongoing genocide on the people of Gaza. So like, you're wrong and right. Do you know what I'm saying? But we have to not
I'm right.
We wouldn't be progressive if we didn't think about the most vulnerable in this country. Who the hell else are we fighting for?
Yeah, but the most vulnerable are the ones that are going to get hurt the most when Trump wins. When we pick the crappiest candidate because some random Latina raised her hand and said, I speak for the most vulnerable community and I demand this. No, that's not how it works. My community is the most vulnerable. We're getting slaughtered in Gaza. So that's it, everybody shut up. I'm now the new king. This is insane logic, insane logic. No, we all vote, we all participate, and we all pick the best possible candidate, no matter what community they come from. That's my opinion. If you say no, there's special magic communities who should have 10 times the vote, I disagree massively. Okay, so I'm sorry that I butchered your point of view, Francesca and Jordan. I acknowledge that I was over the top, okay? But you get all of our points of view.
You're talking to someone, but it ain't me. But okay, Cenk, get it out.
Yeah, I don't know what vulnerable community means. So what if they're in a vulnerable community? That it doesn't affect, here's what I mean, Francesca. It doesn't affect who the best candidate is. You're gonna hurt the most vulnerable community if you pick a crappy candidate.
I never made that point. I'm telling you that. I'm telling you there are more vulnerable communities, and yes, they would be more affected by Donald Trump, but absolutely Joe Biden is a massive liability and he's done nothing to bring them over to his side. So I'm saying, like, can we avoid the grand flattening that, like, there are people who were fine under Trump. Ironically, all of these elites who are telling Biden to drop out. It's like, I think Clooney was actually really chill for 4 years under Donald Trump. You think that dude suffered? No, he got a tax break under Donald Trump. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah, okay. You all hear our points of view, as hyperbolic as I can get. I hope you got the main points, and I hope you got all of our point of view, and make up your own mind. And if you agree with open convention, for God's sake, tyt.com/open convention. I love you guys. Thank you for making those important points. This is what we do at TYT. We have real discussions. Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.